Welcome back to Tremendous's RimWorld Chronicles. This is episode 4 of Volume 1. We pick up right after the team took down the 2 pigmen that dared to invade the colony. Let's get back into the story. The battle against the pigmen taught the colonists one valuable lesson. They were far too exposed. To correct this weakness, the colony gathered up all the leather they'd been saving from butchering the spoils of Tom's hunting excursions and created a perimeter of sandbags all around their facility. They were mismatched and made the surrounding area ugly. A few members of the team came down with malaria a week or so later, possibly due to exploring some of the local ruins or just due to terrible luck. Fortunately, the team's medical skill and supplies were up to the task, and other than some forced bed rest, everyone recovered within a few days. Shortly after everyone was back on their feet, Tom and Tremendous were out scouting the territory when 2 dromedaries came trotting over to them. The men just stood dumbfounded as the dromedaries, better known as camels, nuzzled up to them expectantly. Tom fed the animals from the simple meal he'd brought, which made both the creatures love him immediately. The men didn't even need to rope the camels to get them back home. They followed eagerly. This was a fantastic turn of events, because now, with a little training, these animals would aid them greatly during excursions outside their territory and on trade runs with nearby friendly factions. Food was abundant. Their building was becoming a home, and weeks had gone by since the last time they were invaded. This gave Tremendous time to bond with Tuck. He'd never had a dog before and regretted missing out on so much fun with a companion like Tuck. Since Tuck saved him from the locusts, the 2 of them were nay inseparable. With everything going so well, Tremendous and Tuck decided to continue exploring one of the nearby ruined buildings. This was an outing they were both accustomed to and fond of. Getting out of their rooms and exploring the unknown really appealed to both of them, a trait Tremendous truly valued in his pet. During their last excursion, they discovered an ancient relay that still functioned. Tremendous had been able to hack into it and discover the location of an asteroid orbiting the planet. It was made of pure uranium and would be worth a fortune if he could get to it. It was a secret he kept between himself and Tuck. He had grown fond of the men he was surviving with, but as a vampire, they were still mainly just a food source to him. Today, Tuck and Tremendous were continuing their exploration of the building, hoping to find new treasures that would make life on this planet a little more bearable. The first few rooms they entered were not encouraging. They were filled with the typical trash and broken tech. In one of the rooms, the ceiling had collapsed and nature had taken it back over. Discouraged, but not ready to quit, Tremendous patted Tuck on his head before opening the door to the next room. Inside, he saw exactly what he was hoping for, a hermetically sealed container that could have any number of treasures inside it. His head was so full of the possible riches inside the container that he didn't see the hunter trap sitting in the corner, waiting to be disturbed. It wasn't until he heard the machine beep an alert and its explosives arm that he realized his mistake. Tremendous was befuddled by the situation and reacted out of instinct rather than intelligence. He lashed out at the device, striking it on the side, which sent sparks flying. He realized quickly how stupid his attack had been. All he had managed to do was cause the device to activate its self-destruct protocol. With no time to lose, Tremendous ran out of the room. To his horror, though, Tuck, not realizing the magnitude of the danger, ran towards the device. Before Tremendous could do anything, Tuck had the device in his mouth and was dragging it deeper into the room. Tremendous didn't even have enough time to call out a warning before the device detonated, showering him harmlessly with bits of metal as Tuck was obliterated by the explosion. Tremendous had never felt loss like he did in that moment. He had failed to protect his best friend, a friend so loyal, he gave his life without a second thought. Something good died inside, tremendous in that moment. Something he knew he would never get back. Numb to everything but heartache, Tremendous opened the crate to discover some advanced mechanical components. A prize that he took with him so that Tuck's death would have some meaning. Tremendous picked up what was left of his friend and quietly buried him in the grassy area they had played in this morning. The next few days were rough for Tremendous. He was disheartened by the loss of Tuck, and his mood was sour because of it. He was not himself. Grumpy, mean, short, and even lashed out at the other men at the slightest provocation, whether it was actual or imagined. Due to this, Tremendous made the decision to begin his death rest. With his coffin and monitoring equipment, he would be in a coma-like state for a few days. When he awakened, he'd be refreshed, and hopefully the loss of Tuck wouldn't sit so heavy on his heart. While Tremendous was death resting, a strange child arrived all by himself in their territory. Blackshade and Vortex went out to meet the child. He said his name was Dai Dai. He was 7 years old and demanded to be allowed to join the group. When asked about his parents, the boy wouldn't answer, but the haunted look on his face spoke volumes to the men. Not wanting to send a child back out into the wilderness, they agreed to let the boy join them. Blackshade and Vortex taught him how to garden and where to put their supplies. They also assigned him the chore of cleaning up their base, which was getting a little filthy. In return, they taught him various skills and set up a bedroom all his own, complete with a blackboard, school desk, and toy box. Dai Dai was a sad child, but the men heard him laugh a few times while playing in his new room. It made them feel good to know they were making the child happy again. During an excursion to collect more resources, Blackshade and Tom stumbled across the wreckage of a very sophisticated-looking ship. They couldn't determine much about it, other than it had crash-landed there long before they had, and that it was owned by a group that referred to themselves as mechanoids. I tried many ways to gain access to the ship, but no matter what they hacked or hacked at, they couldn't gain access. Finally, out of frustration, Blackshade and Tom opened fire on the ship. It was more cathartic than anything else, until one of their bullets hit something inside the wreckage that caused it to smolder. The men fell back just far enough to avoid being killed by the ensuing explosion. Guiltily, they put out the surrounding flames caused by the explosion before they could do any real harm. As the flames died out, Blackshade noticed a strange device with a blinking red light on it. Curious, he picked it up, astonished that it wasn't even warm to the touch. He took it back to their base, and after some study, he figured out it was a transponder. He activated it, which caused another similar but smaller mechanoid ship to crash land nearby. The transponder told him that there was a human on board that had a device installed inside of them that would allow them to interact and control smaller mechanoid robots. The transponder showed the current owner of the device had been dead for a long time, but the device could be removed and implanted into someone else so they could gain this ability. Blackshade gathered up the men and went to retrieve the device. The crash wasn't far from their home, but when they arrived, they saw an advanced-looking military robot defending the wreckage. The transponder identified it as a Tesseron and showed that this particular machine was heavily damaged. The men discussed the situation and determined the risk was worth the potential reward. They attacked the machine viciously, determined to win their prize. The battle was vicious, but in the end, they defeated the Tesseron. Tom and Andersmith were wounded by the laser weaponry the Tesseron had employed against them. Their wounds would have been lethal if it wasn't for the aid the rest of the team rendered. After a few days of rest in their medical bay, they'd be scarred, but they would live. Once their friends were safe, Blackshade made his way towards the skeletal remains of the Mechanator. Using the knowledge the transponder had given him, he removed the mechanoid device from the corpse and installed it onto himself. There was no blood or pain, just a feeling of something inside his mind being turned back on. He felt a presence immediately and, curiously, sent out a mental message to it. It was a simple message. "Come here." There was a burst from the sky that preceded a small drop pod hurtling towards them. It landed a short distance away, and no sooner had it made landfall than a small constructoid, no bigger than Dai, popped out of it. The constructoid zoomed over to Blackshade on its tank track wheels. It stopped right in front of him and made a cheerful beeping sound. Blackshade smiled and thought another order at the robot. "Build my home." The constructoid beeped in acknowledgement and raced towards their base, eager to follow Blackshade's command. Blackshade grinned happily as he watched the robot go. Shortly after the Battle of the Mechanoid, the colonists a distress call from the faction Meebo. The Meebo colonists had come by their territory a few times to trade and visit. The men liked the people of Mebo, so when they got their distress call, they acted as if it had come from one of their own. Andersmith and Tom were hurt, but Tom had a deep sense of responsibility to protect people. He and Blackshade were the only colonists they could spare at the moment, so they saddled up the camel they affectionately named Camel Pack and began the half-day journey to the Meebo settlement. They didn't know what they'd find when they got there, but neither of the men had a good feeling about it. Their journey was uneventful, and they arrived at the Meebo settlement after exactly half a day's travel. What they saw when they got there would give the men nightmares for the rest of their days. Every one of the Mebo colonists had been slaughtered. Their bodies had been ruthlessly ripped to pieces by some sort of vicious monster or monsters. Tom and Blackshade cautiously approached the settlement. It was covered in grotesque, fleshy growths that covered most of the buildings, completely engulfing them in some cases, like big pink cancerous blobs. As the men approached, movement from the settlement's center caught their attention. A nightmarish flesh amalgamation came charging towards them with an undulating form that embodied the unnatural. The men didn't hesitate to unload their weapons into the beast, killing it well before it could get to them. The relief the men felt at its death was palpable. With the beast responsible for the settlement's demise dealt with, the men searched for survivors. When they found none, they looted the area for any valuables. In total, they took all the remaining foodstuffs, some drugs, all the remaining weapons, and building supplies. They left for home as soon as they could. Tom and Blackshade returned home as quickly as they could. And while the supplies they returned with were appreciated, the tale of what happened was much less so. A pall of worry clouded the men's moods for a long time, as each of them tried to think of way to not suffer the same fate as the people of the Meebo settlement. Blackshade made the call to the Meebo faction to let them know the fate of their settlement. The faction leader was grateful for the effort of the men and for the information, but it worried Blackshade that he didn't sound surprised by his report. Vortex had perfected his beer brewing recipe, a fact the men appreciated as they tried to drown out the memory of what they'd seen. Perhaps it was due to their lowered morale, or maybe it was just coincidence, but Orlov announced that he would be departing from the colony. There was no preamble or long goodbyes. The man simply thanked everyone for their hospitality and departed as quickly as he'd arrived. Orlov hadn't been the most popular person amongst the men, but he had become one of them, and his departure was felt. Dai refused to come out of his room for a few days as the young boy dealt with the loss of his friend. On a more positive note, Blackshade decided to turn all of this negativity into something positive and threw himself into the study of his mechanoid abilities. It didn't take him long to become well-versed in the subject, and he drafted up plans to create a small mechanoid facility in part of the unused portion of their building. He single-handedly built recharging stations and manufacturing tables where he could build more machines that would prove invaluable to the team. Once set up, he built a mechanoid that cleaned up their facility. A robot Dai was very pleased to see come into service, a lifter robot that continuously hauled supplies around, and an agricultural machine that assisted Andersmith in the garden. The introduction of the machines did wonders for their morale. Freeing the men from some of their labor was just the boost the colony needed to improve their moods and break the pall of moroseness the past few weeks had caused them. Days went by uneventfully, but they were short-lived. After a few days of blissful peace, the Wilfagan faction sent raiders to raid them. It was only a team of 2 Yatakans, but they were still very much a threat. Yatakans are dog-like humans that have adapted to the cold and have a genetic kinship with animals. They are also brutal fighters and naturally hardened to physical damage. The Wilfagan faction may have only sent 2 raiders, but they were as strong and tough as 3 men each. The colonists detected them early and were able to take up positions behind their sandbag barriers long before the Yatakans attacked. The invader armed with a club was gunned down long before he could make it to their front line, but the Yatakan that was armed with a long rifle was able to get a few shots off before Tremendous engaged her in hand-to-hand combat. Tremendous could have dispatched his opponent with ease, but the bloodlust of battle had overtaken the men, causing them to continue firing their weapons. Many of the shots struck the Yatatkin, but a couple of the shots hit Tremendous, turning an easy victory into a bloody one. Looking to end the fight quickly, Tremendous downed the Yatakan with a well-placed blow, but to his surprise, his strike didn't kill the woman, just knocked her unconscious. Without hesitation, Tremendous bound the woman's hands and feet and took her to an unused barracks that still had the original ancient beds they'd used when they first arrived here. It had never occurred to him to use that room as a holding cell, but with the opportunity to question and pry intel from their captive, this was potentially a huge boon for the colonists. As Tremendous carried the unconscious woman to the room, it also occurred to him that they might be able to convince her to join them, if only they could be persuasive enough. The possibilities this battle had brought them intrigued Tremendous to no end. This is where we will put down the story for now. I hope you've enjoyed the 4th installment of Tremendous's RimWorld Chronicles. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to put them in the comments section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.